Welcome back into the Rowdy Studio. I'm Stephen Levine. This is Tom Vandervoort. And the Sylvania 300 is in the books. Just as I predicted, Denny Hamlin comes away with the victory. I remember when I said Denny Hamlin would win.
Just as Denny Hamlin predicted. And
Well,
then he kind of backed off.
I predicted it
but
first.
then he kind of delivered. And I think he kind of had to. And you said it, and you were right. He had to bounce back from a little miscue at the end of the Chicagoland race and do what he had to do here. This is a great track for him. And I think what we learned about Denny is on his tracks, on the tracks that he is good on, when you talk about Richmond, you talk about Martinsville, you talk about New Hampshire, he can run head-to-head and even outrun Jimmie Johnson.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Jimmie Johnson took the points lead, and albeit by 1 point over Brad Keselowski. Denny Hamlin's, 7 back? But now we're heading to Dover, arguably Jimmie Johnson's best track, and arguably Denny Hamlin's worst track.
I think it is Denny's worst track.
So you expect that 7-point gap to widen next weekend.
All things being equal, I think you'll see Denny Hamlin figure out a way to run in the top 10 here.
Maybe.
I think you will.
Okay, top 15 I was thinking, but okay, I'll give you top 10.
I think you will, and so he's got to stay close to Jimmie. Now, of course, disaster can strike anywhere, and I think that's got to be the hope for a lot of these guys. But really, when you think
the
about...
The hope is that disaster will strike.
Yeah.
Oh.
Look, I mean, these guys in the back, they need some help.
Yeah, Jeff
Gordon finished third.
And didn't make up any ground.
He lost ground to Jimmie, right? So those guys are going to need Jimmie, Denny, Brad to have some problems. If you look really at Dover, the race to me points to Matt Kenseth and Greg Biffle. I don't think they've got the stuff to win this thing. I'll just say it right now.
Not now.
Okay?
No, it doesn't seem like it.
But if they're going to be in the mix at all, they're going to, one of them needs to win.
Well,
the other one needs to run top 3.
Let's move on to issue number 2 and talk about Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s second disappointing weekend in a row. But not only did they miss the setup, Dale Earnhardt Jr. made one costly error when he overshot the pit box. You know, going into the chase, this was one of those teams that you were talking about as a championship contender, but they haven't seemed to carry that season momentum, that season consistency over into the postseason. And they certainly don't look like not only a championship winning team, they don't even look like a race-winning team at this point.
Well, look, they won a single race this year, and they were very consistent throughout. You lose a little bit on the consistency front with some mistakes here and there. We talked about it going into this thing. Do they have the ability as a team to kick it up to another level and run, instead of top 10, to run top 5 and top 3? We haven't seen it yet.
But not only did they
not,
they didn't, it's not.
They've taken a step back.
They've taken a step back. They didn't just not kick it up. They regressed.
Well, they made some mistakes have hurt them, right? And the problem is if your bid is based totally on consistency, not on those stellar performances which can drive your average finish up. If you don't have that, you really can't afford even the smallest poopah.
I believe consistency can win you a championship.
That's what we call it in racing, a poopah.
A poopah. I believe consistency can win the championship in the chase format, but only if it's present.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Issue number 3. Let's look at Kyle Busch and Carl Edwards. Kyle Busch finished 28th, I believe. Yeah, 28th. And Carl Edwards finished 19th. This season can't be over soon enough for these two guys.
I don't know what you want me to say. You're right. It can't be over soon enough. What they've got to do is figure out a way to use these last 10 races to get back to that form we're used to seeing from them. Kyle Busch has had an exceedingly frustrating year. Losing a cylinder was just sort of the cherry on the crappy sundae. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like...
I love that. When I go to Ben & Jerry's, that's what I order.
Yeah, well, it's pretty good if you're into crappy sundaes, and that's what he's got. He's had a whole bunch of them this year. And I think as a team, you know, you've got to somehow figure out a way not to be like, oh, well, this season's over, and figure out how to use this chase to point yourself towards next year. It's not easy because you're essentially not racing for this year anymore.
You know, we talk a lot about the quality assurance issues at Joe Gibbs Racing, and they seem to be affecting Kyle Busch more than Denny Hamlin. And I know, you know, we've had this conversation before where you say, well, that's just coincidence. But it seems like there's got to be something those two teams are doing differently, because Denny Hamlin, it's just not getting snake bit on the mechanical issues the way Kyle Busch is.
Well, I would submit to you up to the chase. I think it was coincidence, and this week maybe you'd say there's a little more care going to be paid towards, a little more double checking going to be paid to the 11 car because he's in the chase and none of those other guys are. I don't think there's any kind of, you know, other reason for Kyle having quote-unquote more problems than Denny. And I'd have to go back and look. Denny's had some issues this year.
He has
as well.
had some issues. Now Carl Edwards, of course, had a crew chief change in the middle of this season. His long-time crew chief, Bob Osborne, stepped down for medical reasons.
Boz is cool.
Boz Skaggs was his crew chief first. But, even before the crew chief change, the 99 wasn't stellar.
I feel like Roush-Fenway started the year off well, and I feel like they've gotten behind. I think we're seeing that, or I'm feeling that right now. They are a little bit behind. I think it's a bit late for them to catch up. So Carl Edwards didn't actually run that much more poorly than his teammates. And that, New Hampshire's not going to be the track you expect those guys to win on. Dover is. So if they've got something for anybody, better show up next week.
All right. For Tom Vandervoort, I'm Stephen Levine. That's been your post-race report. Thanks for watching.